and welcome to the X-22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 313, and today's date is March 13, 2014, and the title of this episode is China and Russia warn U.S. that sanctions would trigger unforeseeable consequences. And before we get into that, I just want to thank those people who donated to the X22Report.com site. Thank you very much. I am very grateful and appreciative. I really do appreciate the donations. Thank you so much. And for those people who have never been to the X22Report.com site, you can come on over. There are many things on the site. I put up Sentinel alerts during the day. I comment on them. Not on every single article, but I do comment on them. We also have inflation, deflation, and the overview of the economic collapse. It's a high-level story of what has been happening. And we also have The People, which is a forum of like-minded people talking about the economic collapse and many other things. And there are people on there from all over the world that are contributing. It does not cost anything. You can go there. You can just read what people are saying. And if you're a little hesitant about joining, that's fine. Just read what they're saying. And maybe later, weeks, months down the line, you decide to join, you can join. It is completely free. You can just pick out any type of username that you want to be called by, and that's all you have to do. Let's get into the economic collapse news. We're going to head out to Greece, and what we're seeing out there is that unemployment again is going up. It's at 27.5%. We're seeing there's no signs of this unemployment coming down because there is really no industry, there's no jobs, there's nothing happening there. And what we're seeing is the young people are hit very, very hard with 57% unemployment between ages of 15 and 24. They just do not have jobs, and it's making it very difficult for the people to survive. And you have to remember, the youth of the country support the country going forward. And if they're getting close to 60%, this is more than half of the young people that don't have jobs. And again, this country will not make it. But we're seeing the same thing happen in Cyprus, in Spain, in Italy, in France, all across Europe. It is spreading to the UK, Australia. It's moving all over the place. And here in the United States, we understand that unemployment is very, very high. Now, the corporate media was out there today trying to convince us that retail sales, it's a rebound, it's a miracle. We're really on track, and things are actually getting better. And again, we really have to look at what's really happening here. And it was all over the news today that retail was doing very well. And again, they only use weather when they need it, and they don't use weather when they don't need it. And of course, this is for February, and I guess there was no snow in February, so they didn't have to use it, and the numbers look good, so they just drop weather to the wayside here. But what they do is they go back and they revise a lot of numbers. I mean, back in January, they told us that sales declined by negative 0.4. Then, of course, in February, they go back to January, and they revise the numbers, and the drop was really negative 0.6%. Here, they were expecting 0.2%, and they received 0.3% worth of sales. But when you look around and you see what's really happening, it doesn't make any sense. And this is how we know this number is definitely going to be revised. But if you really look at last month, it was negative 0.6, and now it's positive 0.3. Really, where are we at? Sales are not that great, because let's look at real information. We understand that Barnes & Noble, Staples, Macy's, JCPenney, Sbarro, all closing stores. McDonald's reporting a decline in sales for fast food, which is very inexpensive. Again, from that type of data, we are seeing that how possibly could sales be getting better? Things are closing. People are getting unemployed. We have huge amount of people who are being laid off. So something just doesn't jive. But let's go a little bit further here. We're seeing that most of the sales were in sporting goods, hobby books, and music, and the biggest declines in the sales were in electronic and appliance stores, food and beverage stores, and general merchandise stores. So the main stores were having a problem, and of course those people that were snowed in probably downloaded a book or downloaded some music to keep them going. Sporting goods, who knows, people were in there buying skis to get around. They were buying snow boots or shovels or anything that has to do with the weather at this time. They could have been buying sleds. I mean, who knows? It was just a very strange place to start spending money. But again, we really have to look closer at what's going on here. And let's look at the auto industry for example. If we look at autos, we're seeing that the automobile industry has been channel stuffing dealers. They have about 114 days worth of cars on the lot, and the auto industry overproductions sends U.S. inventory to sales to post-2009 highs. They cannot get rid of these cars. They figured if we build them and we just stuff the dealers with all these autos, people would just come out and buy them all up. They're giving huge discounts. They're giving loans to subprime borrowers just to get these cars off the lots. And again, the total inventory to sales back near ex-crisis highs. So we can see that something is definitely wrong here. Now, they're also reporting at the same time they're telling us that retail sales is getting better, that U.S. business inventories are up. That means these stores, the automobile dealers, all have too much inventory. Plus, they're saying that sales are plummeting and drop to the lowest in 10 months. So let's see. We have stores that have inventory on their shelves that they can't get rid of. Sales are plunging, but they're telling us that retail is rebounding and recovering with stores closing, people getting laid off. So again, something just isn't right. And I'm going to tell you what it is. It is their manipulated numbers. Because what they do is they try to spin the numbers the best they can, and then they come back, and we'll see probably for February it'll probably be a negative 0.1 print when they revise the numbers. But again, in the housing market, we see that things in the housing market are not doing well. Mortgage applications, lowest that we've seen. They're 60% down, and we can see all across the mortgage companies, the departments in financial institutions, their mortgage departments are all laying off people by the thousands. And what's happening right now, as the first quarter of 2014, a total of 152,000 U.S. properties in foreclosure process, and this is excluding bank-owned properties, and had been vacated by the distressed homeowners. So nobody is taking care of these properties. They're just being left alone. They vacated the property. The bank's not taking care of it. People are not coming in to take care of it, and these houses are just falling apart. And this represents around 21% of all properties in the foreclosure process. Now, 4 of the 20 largest metro areas posted annual increases in foreclosure activity. Now, why would this be? Well, what happens is when people get laid off at their high-paying jobs, they can't go out and find these same type of jobs because most of the financial institutions, retail, they're all laying off. So where are you going to go? And eventually what happens is we can't pay for this house, so most people just leave it or they foreclose on the home. New York up 77%. Philadelphia up 20%. Washington, D.C. up 19%. And Baltimore is now up 14%. But let's take a look at what is happening, and a real good indicator to see how the economy is progressing is the Baltic Dry Index. And this has plunged by 8%, near most in 6 years. And again, the Baltic Dry Index is a number issued daily by the London-based Baltic Exchange, not restricted to Baltic Sea countries. The index provides an assessment of the price of moving the major raw materials by sea. Changes in the Baltic Dry Index can give investors insight into global supply and demand trends. This change is often considered a leading indicator of future economic growth. So we're seeing the Baltic Dry Index continually drop, and we saw this right before 2008. So we are heading right back to where we were. And again, the government officials, the Fed, everyone's out there, the corporate media is trying to spin everything that we are completely recovering, things are going well, and again, we know they are not. We know they're not. And yesterday We understand that Goldman Sachs was out there and many other financial institutions, that they're looking at a double dip decrease in revenue, and we are going to see major layoffs coming. Now, another trader committed suicide. This brings the total recent banker deaths to about 10 or so. This was Edmund Eddie Riley, 47, a trader with Midtown's Vertical Group, and they're saying that he jumped in front of a Long Island Railroad train at 6 a.m. in the morning. Maybe he was pushed. I don't know. Okay, now we understand that President Obama is continually pushing out executive orders, taking away the control of the Congress and doing whatever he wants. So the House of Representatives passed the Enforce the Law Act Wednesday, a bill designed to push back against the numerous unilateral moves from the Obama administration, which he's been using to circumvent the law. And H.R. 4138 would authorize the House or Senate to sue the executive branch for not enforcing laws and provide an expedited process through federal district courts. So they're trying to fight back and stop the president and his administration from just doing things on his own. Because you have to remember, he did say he has a pen and a paper and he can do whatever he wants. And in reality, he cannot. He is with the executive branch. He's supposed to follow the orders from Congress and from the people, not dictate what he wants to do. Now, in the past, we talked about people renouncing their citizenship because of the new laws, the new tax laws. And again, there are about 3,000 Americans residing around the globe, and they renounced their U.S. citizenship. And some of them were actually interviewed to find out why they decided to do this. And Donna Lane Nelson, 71, lives in Geneva, Switzerland. She decided to renounce her U.S. Citizenship. She said, I was double taxed on my full pension, and I was losing too much money, and I just couldn't do that. And just because I held a U.S. passport, that it allowed them to tax me whenever they needed at this time, and I just couldn't continue doing this. Lori Lautman, 58, lives in New Zealand. She said the tax obligation imposed by the U.S. drove us crazy, she said, and we just couldn't take it anymore. I am still an American, even though I don't have a passport to prove it. So we can see, because of the new laws, because they're going out there and they're looking for revenue, and this is what they've been doing with the new laws. There are many countries out there that are helping the U.S. government find these people, and if you have a bank account or you have a U.S. passport and you work in another country, they are going to tax you again through the U.S. Okay, now we understand that, all the countries are starting to use drones, and of course they're saying we're going to use them to guard our borders. We're not going to put weapons on there. They mount them with cameras, but we all know what they're really for, because we understand when the economic collapse comes, what they're going to actually use these drones for is to control the population. Let's just say they're going to use them they're going to use them for surveillance. They're going to use them to push people to where they want them to go, or even kill them if they have to. And Australia has committed to purchasing the U.S. Navy MQ-4C Triton unmanned aircraft. Its prime minister said on Thursday the aircraft will be used to secure our ocean resources, including energy resources, off northern Australia, and help to protect our borders. And again, when things go bad and the collapse starts happening, we're going to see these drones being used on the people of the country. Now, Obama created another executive order, and he's issuing orders targeting Americans who threaten peace. Largely, this was unreported, and these are certain sections in the executive order, which he signed last week. He's granting the U.S. government the right to seize property of American citizens determined to be undermining, even indirectly, the democratic process or threatening the peace in Ukraine. Now, again, the executive order does not define which actions constitute a threat to Ukraine democracy or peace. But it does say a U.S. person is defined by the order as any United States citizen, permanent resident alien, entity organized under the laws of the United States or any jurisdiction within the United States, or any person in the United States. But again, What does this actually mean? They're just going to seize the person's property if they interfere with the peace process of with Ukraine. So does that mean if you talk about it and don't agree with the government, they're going to come and seize your assets? It's very unclear what they're trying to do here. But again, they're trying to suppress news agencies. They're trying to suppress people and those people on the internet reporting different angles of the Ukraine crisis, and we can see that they don't want, again, more information coming out about what actually is occurring there. Now we understand in Libya we had a North Korean oil tanker fill up with oil, and we've come to find out that it's actually not North Korean. They were flying the flag of North Korea, but it's part of an Egyptian firm, and it might even be Saudi, belong to the Saudi government. And North Korea denied on Thursday any responsibility for an oil tanker that loaded crude from a Libyan rebel port and fled. The OPEC member states attempted to seize it, saying the vessel that carried its flag was operated by an Egyptian firm. It was unclear where the tanker had planned to sail. Libyan officials said the ship was flagged in North Korea, a flag of convenience to keep the ownership secret. So again, we don't even know exactly who owns this ship. It is registered with an Egyptian firm, and again, the Libyan people of Libya do control the ports, they do control many of the oil fields, and they control most of the country at this point. And again, the Libyan government is in a hotel because they were pushed out of the parliament buildings. And again, if the people take the country over fully and take control of the full military and start selling more oil, not using the U.S. dollar, the central bankers, the U.S. government are definitely going to do something. And they started to do things with threatening sanctions, bringing in military officers to train the Libyan armed forces to help combat the people of Libya. Now, we understand in Ukraine there's a lot of propaganda out there. We understand that the corporate media here in the United States and in many other countries are saying that Russia's building up troops, that they invaded Crimea with 16,000 people and they were allowed to be there because they have an agreement with in Ukraine to allow up to 25,000 troops in Ukraine. So Russia said yesterday, we will allow Ukraine to fly over Russia to show that we're not building up troops. And also what has happened is international journalists are refuting the claims of Russian forces in Crimea. Of course, the Western media is out there saying, oh my God, they're all over the place, there's troops everywhere, there's mass buildup. And international journalist Manuel said, when I traveled to Crimea, I expected to find what I saw back home, images of mighty Russian military storming Ukraine, of protests and politicians claiming that an invasion was taking place right in front of our eyes. But I didn't see this at all. There was nothing there. And again, this is propaganda to convince everyone that Russia is completely taking over Ukraine at this time. Now, of course, Obama is out there and he's issuing new threats against Russia, and he's also contemplating military action. And following a White House meeting with interim Ukraine Prime Minister Yatsenyuk, Obama issued new threats against Moscow. Obama declared that Washington and the international community would completely reject the referendum to be held Sunday in Crimea on secession from Ukraine and affiliation with Russian Federation. U.S. demand that Russia withdraw its forces from Crimea. The U.S. would impose new sanctions if Russia refused to comply with these demands. Obama went out and also hailed the actions of the opposition force, saying that they played the leading role in toppling the elected pro-Russian government, calling them ordinary people fighting for change and democracy. And we know this is all a publicity stunt. It's all propaganda. We know that the coup in Ukraine was created by the U.S., the EU, CIA. They spent about $5 billion. They invaded. They pushed out the government, put in their own people into place, never had elections because they are nervous about the people voting for a different party. And if that happens, they would no longer have control of Ukraine. Now, of course, John Kerry is also out there threatening Russia with tough response to Crimean referendum. U.S. Secretary John Kerry warned Russia Thursday that Washington and Europe were preparing a tough response to a breakaway vote in Ukraine's Crimea. If there is no sign of any capacity to be able to move forward and resolve this issue, there will be a very serious series of steps on Monday in Europe, and here with respect to the options that are available to us, said John Kerry. And again, they are pushing this, they are threatening, and Russia is also responding, saying, listen, you want to bring sanctions to us? Go ahead. But again, you have to remember, if you sanction us, we can sanction you, and we do hold a lot of debt. And we have other countries that hold a lot of debt of the United States. And the Russian government officials and businessmen are bracing for sanctions resembling those applied to Iran. Should Russian foreign exchange reserves and bank assets be frozen, Russia would likely respond by wholesale dumping of their dollar reserves and bonds. In retaliation, Russia could opt to only accept gold bullion for payment for their gas, oil, and other commodity exports. This would likely lead to a sharp fall in the dollar and a surge in gold prices. So the U.S. needs to be very, very careful at this point of what they're doing. They are, threatening Russia right now. And again, China, who is siding with Russia, India, who is siding with Russia, they're all out there saying, whoa, 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 be careful here. And China now is warning the West not to enforce these sanctions. Sanctions could lead to some type of action that would trigger a spiral with unforeseeable consequences. Again, China holds a lot of debt from the U.S. They have a lot of treasury bonds, about $1.3 trillion worth of treasury bonds at this point. They have a lot of dollars in reserves. This would be catastrophic, and eventually this would lead to war, because we have to remember the end game of the central bankers is war. This is exactly what they want, because they understand the dollar is imploding. They understand the economies of the private Western central banks are collapsing. Look at Europe. Look at the United States. It is all completely imploding on itself, and they realize this. They've been trying to prop it up a little bit longer, until they can get the war started. Now, at the same time that all this is happening, Russia is deploying about 8,500 troops for artillery drills in the south, and this goes along with their paratrooper training that they've been doing. And the U.S. is out there saying that, you know what, we are going to keep our warships in the Mediterranean due to the Ukraine crisis. And Obama was out there saying that the Pentagon's plan to extend the presence of the carrier strike group led by the nuclear aircraft carrier George Bush in the eastern Mediterranean in connection with the events in Crimea will now stay there. There could be another reason why they're staying there in the Mediterranean, because we understand that the United States and other nations, Israel, Saudi Arabia, and other Arab nations, are making another push into Syria. So we have many things going on at this time. And we understand that the White House is in talks with the P5+1 deal with Iran. And Obama today went out there and he renewed the National Emergency Act. And by doing this, he extended the sanctions on Iran for 1 more year. Now, they're in the middle of peace talks. This shows that they really don't want peace. They really want to get into their banks. They really want the IMF, the U.S. government, the central bankers in their banks. They want to control them. They want to put their natural resources on the U.S. dollar. And if they can't do this, guess what? They're going to go another route, and they're going to use Syria to get into Iran or do something else. But their end goal is always the same. They need to get into these countries to prop up the dollar a little bit longer, because they need to get a war started. And then they're pushing into Syria now. They're pushing into Ukraine. They're making pretty much trouble everywhere they are. I mean, there's a conflict everywhere. Now, we understand that Russia, the U.S., Syria all had an agreement to remove the chemical weapons in Syria. And just recently, and we've said this many, many times before, that the rebels in these countries are making it very difficult for Syria to remove the chemical weapons. And right now, explosive projectiles this week hit Syria port city, where the country's regime is shipping away chemical arms for destruction. The strike on the port took place on Sunday when Syrian President Bashar al-Assad government was slated to transfer an additional batch of warfare chemicals to the Mediterranean Sea shipping hub. Officials delayed a separate delivery of arms because of the threats, and it's not safe. And of course, the U.S. is out there saying you're not abiding by the rules, you're not out there, you're stalling at this time, and they're falling behind schedule. Well, when you're actually having the rebels bomb the port, it does make it a little difficult to get the chemical weapons out on the ships. And of course, Syria is out there saying that they condemn such actions. This is a glaring violation of Resolution 2118 of the UN Security Council. And again, the rebels are interfering with the removal of the chemical weapons at this time. Now, there's a new bill out there, and what they're going to do is they're going to restrict Americans from traveling to Syria and would imprison violators for up to 20 years for breaching these restrictions. They have this new bill, and it's called the International Conflicts of Concern Act, would officially designate Syria as a country of conflict concern. Well, most likely they're putting this together because of the new strike into Syria. They don't want Americans going there. We've seen this happen many, many times all over the place. And again, they are most likely prepping for this. And on the other hand, they're also beefing up the terrorist propaganda. And that's what they're doing right now. The international, there are... Wolf said there are Americans over there fighting. The concern is they'll learn the techniques and strategies of jihad and bring them back to the U.S. These terror groups have aspirations for attacks on the homeland, Clapper recently told the Senate Intelligence Committee. So we can see there are two things happening right here. They're preparing for this major, major strike into Syria, and we saw this happen back in 2013 of August. They're doing the same exact thing now. They're trying to pass this bill. They don't want Americans going to Syria, and of course they'll set up the state the urgent warnings that no travel advisories to Syria pretty soon once this starts moving forward. Now, on the stock exchange, CEOs say they are on high alert over cybersecurity. More than half of the world's exchanges were hit by cyber attacks in 2012, and they're out there saying we are worried a lot, and we are far more worried now than we've ever been just a couple of years ago. And they're saying that they're seeing more and more attacks hitting the exchanges like the NASDAQ, the stock exchange, the BATS, and we all have to remember all of these exchanges have kill switches implemented now. And again, who's helping them with the security of the exchanges? Well, NASDAQ has been adding former military and government security experts to its cybersecurity team, as well as working closely with the FBI. Every time the FBI is in one of these places, it seems like something happens. And now that this has come out, that they're worried and they're on high alert, we can expect something to happen. Now, we understand that it's pretty much for sure that our power grid, our infrastructure is going to hit with some type of attack. I mean, we see the dry runs in California. We see the Grid X2 drill. We see what's happening. We see all the warnings from all the government officials because they definitely are planning something. But they're even pushing this further. They're saying that the U.S. infrastructure is vulnerable to cascading system failures caused by weather disasters, and they're blaming this on climate change. That there are two U.S. government reports released Thursday warn that the U.S. infrastructure is completely vulnerable to the effects of climate change, and it could black out cities or states if this climate change doesn't stop, and they are really pushing this agenda. Of course, this is a twofold agenda that they're pushing. One is to impose more taxes on the people, and the other one is to let us know that something is going to happen, and we're going to see the lights go out. We're going to see cyber attacks on the exchanges, on the financial institutions. We're going to see attacks on the power grid, on the water supply system, because they need these type of events to push their agenda forward, to get into war, to create an event which will rally up the people to beg for war, to respond to that country that did this to us. And this is what they're doing right now. And if you remember back, we did have the Grid X2 drill back in the fall of 2013. Of course, this was a practice run of them bringing down all of these different infrastructures. And there was a report that came out, and they're saying that nearly all the utilities that participated in the two-day exercise last November to test the preparedness of the power grid for online and physical attacks said that their planning was not good enough. All of these locations are not ready for an attack. And we saw that in California when you had those, gunmen that shot down and cut the power out just by using bullets. They're saying that the power infrastructure is not ready will not withstand a cyber attack on it. And again, this is all in preparation for what is coming. And also what they saying if these transformers do blow out because of a cyber attack or from physical attacks, their findings are, after the drill, the utility systems needed better access to additional transformers, which are large, hard to move, and require long lead times for procurement. So we can see what's happening. We are going to be in the dark for quite a while, and it's going to be a very difficult time. I don't think it's going to happen all across the country. I think it's going to happen in pockets because they want the people to understand and realize what is actually happening at this time, and this way they get the news that these countries or country caused this and we need to go to war. Because again, the polls show the American people do not want war. They could care less about Ukraine. They can care less about Syria. And the only thing that's going to really move them is something that happens here on U.S. soil. Now, we understand in Ukraine that this was a coup, and we understand that they're going to attempt a false flag to get some type of war started. And of course, it always has to look like it's coming from the other side. And a source in Ukrainian government confirmed that the transfer of gold reserves of Ukraine to the United States was ordered by the acting Prime Minister Yatsenyuk, and also Jason Gresh emails were hacked. He is the Assistant Army Attaché at the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine. The emails discuss setting up bombs and false flags to blame Russia. And this goes on to say, events are moving rapidly in Crimea. Our friends in Washington expect more decisive actions from your network. I think it's time to implement the plan we discussed lately. Your job is to cause some problems to the transport hubs in the southeast in order to frame up the neighbor. It will create favorable conditions for Pentagon and the company, which is most likely the CIA, to act. Do not waste time. My friend, Jason P. Gresh, Lieutenant Colonel, U.S. Army, Assistant Army Attaché. So we can see what is happening, and we all understand this. We all understand that there's going to be some type of an event because they need this to push this agenda forward, and they need it to get the American people all riled up and beg for war. Listen, everyone, thanks for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.